Hello and welcome to Consider the Truth. My name is Scott and my goal is to help anyone listening to apply greater truth to their lives. I have another video today about a dream about the last days. But before I get into that, I wanted to talk a little bit, just for a minute, about the John Taylor video. Some people were asking me lots of questions about that and stuff. I wanted to go through this website real quick. It's the BYU website about John the Revelator, or John Taylor was referred to as our modern John the Revelator. And it talks about his revelation process. It says, George Reynolds, President Taylor's private secretary, provided insights to the revelatory process that he witnessed as John Taylor's scribe, recording the revelations as they came through the prophet. When I reported at the Gardo House, or the president's home and office, in the morning, I would occasionally find him writing at a table, either in his bedroom or in the small office on the west side of the building, occupied by myself. On my arrival, he would arise, I would seat myself where he had been sitting, and I would continue the revelation he had commenced to write by dictating it to me. While doing so, he generally walked backwards and forwards along the room. When the writings was finished, I read it to him, generally more than once, and he would say, yes, that's right. On only one occasion do I remember that he made any alteration in that which was written. There was one short phrase that did not appear quite plain. I read it over to him 3 times and then slightly changed it, and when I read it again, he said, that's right. Reynolds observed, generally when a message is prefaced with, Thus saith the Lord, the language as well as the ideas are his, not that of the prophet. He believed that the revelations John Taylor received were in fact direct wording of the Lord. He stated, 2 things are noticeable in the wording of John Taylor's revelations, their similarity to the revelations given to the prophet Joseph Smith, and the difference between them and President Taylor's ordinary style of speaking and writing. Reynolds, who is familiar with President Taylor's conversation style, said, the president would normally preface his subject with a somewhat lengthy introduction or argument, working gradually to the point he wished to make. However, Reynolds noted in the revelations given through him, the Lord makes no preface. Verily, thus saith the Lord, let my servant, or verily, thus saith the Lord, it is my will. The main subject is reached at once, and when the message is delivered, the revelation closes without peroration or argument. So, and then this website goes through a number of revelations that John Taylor received, and they were always in the same process of being having a scribe write them down, and I'll leave a link to this website in the description if you'd like. That last video where I read the revelation supposedly from John Taylor, as he was the prophet in 1877, and Wilford Woodruff was in the Quorum of the 12 Apostles. He wrote down the revelation in his journal. That revelation didn't go through the same process. It could have been, like I said in my previous video, it could have been from John Taylor, and maybe it happens. Maybe it happens exactly like he said. However, I've also created another video. Let me turn this back on. I also created another video called The Key to Avoiding Deception, which it's just a bunch of different quotes from prophets saying how we shouldn't be kind of taken away from hearsay or secondary sources or things that aren't actively and consistently taught over the pulpit from the prophets. And there should be a concert of clarity, as they say it. And so that previous revelation didn't have any of those things, and that's why I said I don't put any stock into it, meaning I basically take it and I put it on the shelf and say, that's interesting, that's fun to read about, that's entertaining. Maybe it happens, maybe it doesn't, but I'm not, making a checklist saying, oh, this needs to happen next, and then this, and then, look out for these things. To me, it's fun. I think it's very interesting and entertaining. And I have another one of those interesting and entertaining videos for you guys today. Maybe this happens, maybe it doesn't. This isn't from the prophet. This is actually from a non-member, and she was taking a tour through the Cardston, Canada temple and had a very interesting experience. I think it's very interesting and entertaining, and it should only be taken as such. Maybe it happens, maybe it doesn't. I'll leave a link for this in the description as well. Let's see. All right. Dear Brother Smith, I am pleased to answer your letter on December 1st as to the letter of a non member who wrote of impressions received while going through the temple before it was dedicated, the truth of which letter you asked me to verify, and which I am pleased to do. It was a Quaker lady who was a magazine writer from eastern Canada. She has some relatives in Lethbridge, about 60 miles from Cardston, and being so deeply impressed on her first visit, she had them bring her a second time. This time I was acting as guide. She would sit in each room and never said a word to anyone in the company, but seemed to be in deep meditation all the time. When she reached her own home several weeks later, she wrote this letter, which has caused so much comment all over the church. We have never been able to understand how she seemed to know so much about our faith and our belief in our future life and works after death. I never learned her real name. She visited us along in 1921. I've never heard from her since that time, but the letter is genuine and of her own impressions, received while in the temple, while on the 2 visits she mentions. Sincerely, your brother. So this is the letter that she wrote. This is her actual letter of her visions. And it's been actually probably a couple years since I read this, so hopefully I don't butcher the reading too badly. I'll do my best. We have been in to the temple erected by your church, wherein are to be performed the sacred rites in accordance with your faith. The first time, I was strongly impelled to describe to you my impressions. I did so, but before the completion of the letter, I received some news that so affected me that, acting upon the spur of the moment, I destroyed the document in its entirety. The continued feeling within me of dissatisfaction as to something left undone, coupled with a desire upon the part of the members of my household who had not visited the temple, led to our second visit to Cardston, in which you so kindly consented to accompany us, notwithstanding the inclement weather and personal inconvenience to yourself which the journey entailed. It was because of this and many other evidences of your friendship that has given me the privilege to presume to bother you with what after all may be foolish fantasies of a too impressionable mentality. To me it does seem so, for never before in my life have such powerful impressions been infringed upon my inner consciousness as during my visit through the temple. Especially was this true at our second visit. The impressions of our first visit were repeated with such overwhelming intensity and variety of detail that I must positively inform you of my experience. It seems to me it were a sacred duty upon my part to do this, and knowing as I do that your friends will lightly ridicule what to me is a personal matter, I am going to give you in detail my experience in the hope that if it is well, maybe it is something more than imagination, that you and others of your faith may wisely analyze and correctly use whatever may be gleaned from this letter. A fortress in time of storm was the first thought that shaped itself in my mind with my first view of this ancient yet modern temple, mellowed with the spiritual usage of ancient civilization and customs, yet alert, virile, and watchful. A grand, solemn, strong, beautiful, useful house of spiritual progression, which seemed to be the embodiment of architectural impression of ancient civilization and glory, suddenly reincarnated and for a future and higher civilization than our own. Strength and beauty exaggerated the more flimsy houses and buildings of the town and gave a painfully obvious example of how the soul within is expressed through the material body, either in the individual or nation or a race, either in the man or his architecture. Try how I would, I could not get away from the feeling that the town itself was inferior to the latest building, so new and yet so old. Even the electric lights failed to change this thought. that the temple and the town represented two different epochs of humanity's spiritual development expressed in architecture. The town embodiment, the present epoch, science, art, invention, harnessed purely for trade or commerce, irrespective of past or future development, the temple embodies the accurate knowledge of the ancient world, combined with the modern inventions of science and inspiration as the road to a higher future development so near at hand. Let me put it down even another way. There is a place called Cardston. A temple linking the past with the present has been built at Cardston, and the town has become a collection of flimsy huts nestled at the foot of the temple, which will continue to function for the spiritual purposes for which it is raised. Just as the exterior impressions compared with the present and future epochs, so did the interior also reflect comparison. Of the beautiful and artistic effects, I need not dwell. Abler pens can describe the interior from this viewpoint. Sufficient for me to say that the shape of the temple is a cross, that each apartment is symbolic and artistic and structural effects of some stage of humanity's progress through the ages. In fact, everything physical is a stepping stone to spiritual progress, as such is typified in these ceremonies. All this was kindly and intelligently explained to us by Mr. Douce on one occasion and by Mr. Wood on the second visit, but I'm afraid I was very indifferent and inattentive upon both occasions, for which I tender them my sincere apologies. I had no intentions of being rude or discourteous, but from the moment of entering the temple upon leaving, I was placed in the position of having, as it were, to listen to the grasp of dual narrative all the time, with the result so engrossed was I at times that I am afraid I was so absent-minded as to appear inattentive, if not positively stupid. I have stated that my impression of the exterior of the building was that of a place of waiting for a higher civilization than our present one. This would suggest a condition of emptiness, but that is not what I mean. An ordinary, newly erected building has no atmosphere at all until it has been inhabited some time, after which it has, as it were, a living atmosphere. What kind of an atmosphere is this? It is largely determined by the spiritual development and thought of the person using and inhabiting the building. This applies especially to places of worship or consecration, and is very noticeable to a sensitive person. Sometimes such an atmosphere is agreeable, exalting, etc., sometimes very much the reverse, depending upon the spiritual harmony or otherwise of the persons under this atmospheric rule, but was not so as far as it was concerned while outside the temple. I could not understand the overwhelming scene of ancient atmosphere which the building actually possessed in its very granite blocks, in spite of the fact that I know a few months previous these stones had been laid, yet the feeling of age predominated. I dismissed the feeling as well as I could by thinking that the place of the structure was reasonable for the suggested age, but when I entered the temple, how quickly I found there was nothing to suggest to me that the present atmosphere of which I had spoken, but it was empty. Emphatically no. Time and again, as I listened to the speaker explaining some phase of the building or its meaning, I would be seeing beyond him some illustrious of kaleidoscopic nature depicting what he was describing, only more completely and vividly. The characters were so plain to me that I required all my self-control to keep silent from room to room. This continued and only ceased when we were out of the frost and snow once more. There was no set plan for presenting these pictures to me. It seemed as if, when I thought something mental, a picture instantly presented itself, an explanation of some word of the conductor, which would have the same effect. I was not afraid, only awed by the wonder of it all and the fearful, impressive feeling that I received, which seemed to embed every little detailed scene into my brain, from which it will ever remember and record. And vivid as all of it was, these incidents herein related are the ones upon which I received instructions. The scenes which I observed of a historical character seemed chiefly to verify and amplify the speaker's outline of past history, and so I do not feel impressed to record such, except to state that the same patriarchal characters whom I observed directing and influencing the early movements of the church were the same down through every age and epoch, and as the scenes advanced to more modern times, I saw among these spiritual characters and counselors persons whose features I had previously observed as being in the material body on other historical occasions. It seemed as though the temple was filled with the actual spiritual bodies of these previous leaders of your church, each seeming to have the work that person was engaged in whilst in the flesh. In that temple, I saw persons who were leaders of your church during its march across the American desert, now engaged in helping these higher patriarchs under whose orders they seemed to be working. It was these latter spiritual leaders, if I may use that term, whom seemed to be instructed to show me the scenes here recorded. I can give no time as to the happening, except that the impressions I received were of actual, present, or immediate future. I saw first a brief but comprehensive sketch of the present state of the world, or as you would term it, the Gentile kingdoms. Each country in turn was shown its anarchy, hunger, ambitions, distrusts, and warlike activities, etc., and in my mind was formed from some source the words, "As it is today with the Gentiles." I saw international war again break out, with its center upon the Pacific Ocean, but sweeping and encircling the whole globe. I saw that the opposing forces were roughly divided by so-called Christianity on the one side and by the so-called followers of Mohammed and Buddha on the other. I saw that the great driving power within these so-called Christian nations was the great apostasy of Rome in all its political, social, and religious aspects. I saw the worldwide dislocation and devastation of production and slaughter of people occur more swiftly and upon a larger scale than ever before. I saw an antagonism begin to express itself from those so-called Christian nations against your people. I saw those with a similar faith to yours in the Far East begin to look toward Palestine for safety. Zoom in just a little bit here. I saw the international world war automatically break down and national revolution occur in every country and complete the work of chaos and desolation. I saw geological disturbances occur, which helped in this work as if it were intended to do so. I saw the Cardston temple preserved from all of this geological upheaval. I saw the international boundary line disappear as these two governments broke up and dissolved into chaos. I saw race rioting upon the American continent on a vast scale. I saw hunger and starvation in this world. I saw disease produced by hunger, strife, and chaos complete the end of this present order or epoch. How long these events were in reaching this consummation, I do not know, but my impression was from the outbreak of the international war, these things developed into a continuous procession and almost ran concurrently, as it is with a sickness. The various symptoms are all in evidence at one and the same time, but in different stages of development. My intensified thought was, what of the church, if such is to become of the kingdoms of the earth? Was immediately answered by a subconscious statement, as it is in the church today. And I saw these higher spiritual beings throughout the length and breadth of the air, marshaling these spiritual forces and concentrating them upon the high officials of your church upon earth. I saw the spiritual forces working upon these officers, impressing and moving them, influencing and warning them. I saw the spiritual forces begin to unfold these things into the minds of your elders and other high officials, especially during their spiritual devotions and official duties, and those activities which exalt the mind of the individual or groups. I saw the impressions take hold and inspire the more receptive and spiritual men until it was all clearly revealed to them in the way the spiritual patriarch desired. Again, I seemed to hear the words, "as it will be." I saw the higher officials in council and under inspired guidance issue instructions to your people to reconsecrate their lives and energies to their faith, to voluntarily discipline themselves by abstaining from all those forms of indulgence which weaken the body, sap the mentality, and deaden the spirit, or waste the income. I saw further on instructions given whereby places of refuge were prepared quietly but efficiently by inspired elders. I saw Cardston and the surrounding foothills, especially north and west for miles, being prepared as a refuge for your people quietly but quickly. I saw elders still under divine guidance, counseling and encouraging the planting of every available acre of soil in this district so that large supplies would be near the refuge. I saw the church property under cultivation of an intensified character, not for sale or profit, but for the use of the people. I saw artisan wells and other wells dug all over the territory so that when the open waters were polluted and poisoned, that the people of the church and their cattle should be provided for. I saw the fuel resources of the district develop in many places and vast piles of coal and timber stored for future use of the building. I saw the territory carefully surveyed and mapped out for the camping of a great body of the people of the church. I saw provision also made for a big influx of people who will not at first belong to the church, but who will gather in their tribulation. I saw vast quantities of surgical appliances, medicines, disinfectants, etc., stored in the temple basement. I saw inspiration given the elders whereby the quantity, quality, and kind of things to be stored were judged, which might not be attainable in this territory in time of chaos. I saw defensive preparations working out the organizations of the camps on maps. I saw the mining corridors used as places of storage underground. I saw the hills surveyed and corrals built and sequestered places for cattle, sheep, etc. That should be corrals. The corrals were built to sequester the sheep. Quietly and quickly, I saw the plans for the organization and the single men and their duties. The scouts, the guards, the nurses, the cooks, the messengers, the children, the herders, the temple guards, etc. I saw these things going on practically unknown to the Gentile world, except the great apostasy, whose knowledge and hatred is far-reaching, and in this day of its temporary power. This was going on piece by piece as the elders were instructed to do. I saw the other officials obeying the inspired instructions, carrying their message and exhorting the people to carry out from time to time the revelation given them, whilst all around, throughout the Gentile world, the chaos developed in its varying stages, faction against faction, nation against nation, but all in open or secret hostility to your people and their faith. I saw your people draw closer and closer together as this became more tense, and as the spiritual forces warned them through the mouth of your elders and your other officers. I saw the spiritual forces influencing those members who had drifted away to re-enter the fold. I saw a greater tithing than ever before. I saw vast quantities of necessaries, supplies. I'll do that again. I saw vast quantities of necessary supplied by members whose spiritual eyes had been opened. I saw a liquidation of properties and effects disposed of quietly but quickly by members of the church, as the spiritual influences directed them. I saw the inspired call sent forth to all the church to gather the refugees of Zion. I saw the stream of your people quietly moving in the direction of their refuge. I saw your people moving more quickly and in larger numbers until all the stragglers were housed. I saw the wireless message flash from Zion's refuge to Zion's refuge in their several places that all was well with them And then the darkness of chaos closed around the boundaries of your people, and the last days of tribulation had begun. The end. Hope you enjoyed this reading. Please give it a like if you think other people would enjoy hearing this as well. And please subscribe. I'm trying to get a few more subscribers because I have some thoughts and things that I'd like to share, but I'd also like to share it to as many people as possible. A lot of times once I post these videos, they'll get views, and then the views drop off, and whoever sees it when I first post it usually see it, but anyone after that, it doesn't. YouTube doesn't keep reminding people to watch the video, so the views drop down. I have some really important things that I'd like to share with people, though, but I don't want to share it too soon because I think it could really help a lot of people, and I want to help as many people as possible. So please subscribe. Please share videos if you think they're important or interesting or entertaining or for any reason. I hope you enjoy this one. Talk to you later. Bye.